The Burrows of Berea is a conversational podcast. We study the Bible and we talk about it. Not all of us are of the same faith, and one of us doesn't actually have a faith.
And that's wonderful. We all love one another, and we're going to continue to talk about these things.
The things we believe in and the things we believe about what we read in the Bible. Not all of these are necessarily true. Some of it is opinion and speculation. Thank you for
listening and speculating with us.
There you go. That was good. Yes.
You are listening to the Burrows of Berea.
Side studies.
Welcome back to the Burrows of Berea. Let's start that one over. I almost said burritos.
Burritos.
I'm starving.
Are you
Burrows
starving?
of burritos of burritos. Welcome back to the Burrows of Berea. I am Rick Welch, and to my left is Billy I Candy Kimsey.
For Easter, a cad billy egg. About it, yes.
Oh no! I just remembered Holly gave me some of those Reese's eggs for you because you mentioned it in the podcast.
Oh man,
I've got
you
them.
forgot them?
Yeah, I did.
Oh
I
yeah,
didn't eat them.
Yeah,
Such a
that's what
hoser.
the peanut butter smell in here is. Your breath.
Straight out of Compton is Ralph Hicks.
Represent.
To my right is Cherry the Annihilator Lewis.
Hello.
Come on, you had
Hi, everybody.
last time she
guys.
did the hello.
I like the opposite. I like the hello.
Hey guys.
And with the little hello behind the glass is Rocket Man Andy Bishop.
Hi.
That's good. Did you hear in the last one where he did this? Like, I think I used the word whore, and he wasn't going along with it, and he went. It sounded like a dying rocket, you know, like one of the NASA rockets instead of what Elon Musk makes.
Oh,
Yeah, Elon Musk is trying to buy Twitter.
Yeah, it's trying to like a forcible takeover.
$52 a share.
54, I think, and that's
Is it up? Huh?
Yeah, that's $1 over what I would give.
Yeah.
That's several billion. I mean, that's crazy. Crazy
Yeah.
money.
yeah.
I don't know that I trust that human being to have control of a public speech platform like that.
You know, especially the way he talks about AI, and he's like, you know, in about 7 years, you know, AI is going to take over the planet, and it's like,
He's an interesting man, but he's one of those that man is 78% media presentation.
Oh,
he's
yeah.
so conscious of that crap, and but it's not for the good of mankind. It's strictly for the good of Elon Musk. He's 5 different people if you watch 5 different interviews.
yeah.
He's not to be trusted with a speech platform.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, he's got his hands in a lot of things, you know.
Oh, he's not dumb.
No.
He's self-serving to a large extreme, and he's very media savvy. I just don't trust him with a speech platform that big.
Yeah.
It's not a good look to me.
Well, you know, every time he makes some sort of offhanded comment on Twitter, the stock market goes into like a feeding frenzy. Like people can't figure out what to do. Like he did with, is it Dogecoin or Dogecoin?
Dogecoin, yeah.
It's spelled, there's a picture of a dog.
It's Doge, though.
It's Doge.
Yeah, it's kind of like a meme. It's kind of like a meme thing. It's from, memes about Doge or whatever.
Yeah. I knew a lot of young people that actually started like getting into Dogecoin and
Yeah, it was a giant currency manipulation. Part of the reason I don't trust Elon Musk is because things like that are generally intentional.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
Yes.
he understands the power he wields, and he wields it to make more money, which, look, I get.
I would do the
But,
same thing.
You know, that's Lex Luthor. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Let's just, you have to be
that's
a little.
great.
You have to be a little careful when you have
know who
that
that
amount
is?
of power.
Don't know who he is.
You know Superman?
Kryptonite.
No, I know who Lex
Yeah,
Luthor
yeah.
is. I don't know who this Elon Musk guy is.
Oh,
He
really?
owns, he purchased Tesla. He got rich off of he
PayPal.
comes from he got rich from PayPal, but he comes from like a ton of like mine money from South Africa. His parents were quite wealthy mine owners in apartheid South Africa. But probably no problems there.
Yeah.
And he's a smart and interesting human being, but I don't trust him as far as I could throw this building.
No. He also
No.
owns SpaceX, which they're the ones that make the rockets, you know, that NASA is using. And then he also owns the Boring Company.
Yeah, that's cute. That's fun. The Boring Company is real neat.
That's pretty neat, where they actually go underneath, like several miles down beneath the surface, like in LA, and he's boring a tunnel
it's actually a terrible idea
yeah.
when you compare it to literally any solution that is even vaguely resembling mass transit.
Yeah.
It is massively expensive and wildly inefficient. It's a terrible idea.
Hopefully
it never happens. They just put trains in.
I just want to wreck 6 miles beneath the surface of the earth.
Yeah, in a tunnel that's bumper to bumper.
Yeah, exactly.
Neat
On a fault
ideas.
line.
These are good like sci-fi book ideas, but it is a massively inefficient way to move people in the real world.
Now, the Boring Company is a train. Okay, it's a super train.
No, it's not the giant tunnels that move cars underneath.
It's not cars. It's actually trains. They're bullet trains that are magnetic.
They've changed that.
Yeah, it's no longer cars because I'm not going to drive 6 miles underneath the surface of the earth and have a like I'm not a fender bender.
If he's going to start digging
we'll be there in
holes
6 hours. Like
if he's going to start digging holes and putting high speed rail underneath the earth, I'm all for that.
That's what he's doing. Eventually he wants to go from LA to New York, and he wants to be able to go faster than planes can go.
It's so outrageous. You couldn't do that underground, though. I mean, it's difficult enough in a city, but it makes sense because the land doesn't exist. So to do some things, you have to go underground. But from New York to LA, you got to be above ground.
Accelerator in there.
Yeah.
And
Sure.
make sure you call before you dig.
Yeah.
Right, yes.
Oh, trust me. Everything they tell you about where the stuff in your yard is, it's going to be wrong.
Oh,
That's right.
It's going to be wrong every time.
Yeah, they always hit the water line every time. Can you imagine being in a tunnel and they hit the water line? Oh, you want to freak out?
Yeah.
I would be freaking out.
I'll try to make this quick. There's this really fascinating program about how they dug those new tunnels under London.
Yes.
With these those giant boring machines that bore and put the walls together as they go, and how they had to basically thread a needle with a machine that bores a hole wide enough for trains to go in two different directions.
Yeah.
It was fascinating.
Wow.
Yep.
The technology is neat.
I actually took the train that went through underneath the English Channel over to France.
The Channel.
Oh, yeah,
is that Channel?
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's what they call it. But yeah, from London to Paris, it was crazy. It was really fast too. Kind of surprising. Yeah.
That's cool.
Yep. And I think I watched Harry Potter when I was on there.
Welcome to your public transit podcast.
Yeah, that's right. So anyway.
Before we get started, I have a question.
Ask away.
Because I forgot to look it up. Where were the sightings of Jesus after he died and resurrected? Where
were they?
Where were they? I know one was there outside of the tomb, but where else?
One was on the road to Emmaus,
Okay.
where he saw the two disciples that were walking. And the Mount of Olives was one. That's where he ascended from. And also on the Sea of Galilee, he was on the beach because he met with the disciples there. We know about those. I don't know of the others. I think that's about it.
I was trying to figure out how many places.
Yeah, it says, he was obviously 40 days and he wasn't always in the same place. There's no telling where all he went. But anyway, yeah, those are the ones that I know biblically. There might be more, but those are the ones that come to mind. So Ralph asked me to do this. I'll tell you that this view of the Olivet Discourse that we've been doing is from the preterist approach. And I've been saying that, pretty much every episode. But this is looking at the second coming as a past event. There's a lot of differences between the different sects in Christianity that look at eschatology. And preterist is one. And preterist, meaning praetor, means past, which just means these events took place in the past. Now, the reason I think that this took off is because it uses the time statements that are in the Bible. When Jesus says, "This generation shall not pass till all these things take place," it means that it meant something, that what he said actually happened. Right now, in most churches, they believe that that was somewhat symbolic, or it's going to be used for a later generation. Not this generation, but that generation in time. That there's this big on hold thing, And I'm going to get into, I will not forget this, I am going to get into a little bit more about the history of dispensationalism in this particular podcast, but I wanted to talk to each one of you and let you guys have a chance, to talk. So from the listeners, if you don't mind, read Matthew chapter 24 and 25, and you can get an idea what we're talking about. It's the Olivet Discourse, where Jesus tells the disciples when the temple is going to be destroyed, what the sign of his coming would be, and when the end of the age would be. So that's what it's about. So Cherry, you've been in the faith, 7, 8 years?
Yes.
So 7 or 8 years. So your only teaching that you've been receiving is a dispensational view. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. So the stuff that I've been bringing in this study, What do you think? Has it changed your mind at all, or where are you at? Are you on the fence, or?
I would have to say that it hasn't changed my mind. It would take a lot of studying, more than what we've discussed, to change my mind at this point.
Yeah.
I mean,
Which is good. I mean, you're not just,
No.
A reed shaking in the wind.
Yeah, no. To change the way I see it and the way I feel about it, it would take, like I've said before, it would take the Holy Spirit directing me in the direction of, from a preterist view, but it would also take a lot of studying on my own part as well, which I have not studied in depth to be able to change my mind at this point.
Sure. Andy, so you'd never really heard this approach before.
No, I didn't even know it was an option.
Yeah. What? Do you have any thoughts in regard to it? Like, how do you feel about? Obviously, coming from your perspective, I'm very curious. Like, you can see how Christians argue points all the time. You know what I mean?
I mean, this. If I was going to try to interpret this document in some way, it would be this way that just makes sense. Like, I feel like you have to make such big logical jumps to put it in the future. 800-year-old people and stuff. I mean, look at the stuff people believe to like make that make sense to themselves. It's just, I'm not big on like giant logical reaches like that. It makes a difficult subject more difficult to me. And I just, again, maybe if we had somebody that was ready to argue strongly the other side and was as informed as you, but just reading the text literally, it seems to make sense to me, or at least what we've gone over, right?
Absolutely. And we're going to do a little side study in the future, just you and I on Notes from the Underground. And I'm actually going to do that. I'm going to give the dispensationalist theory, and we can do it in an hour. We can literally lay out what they believe and why, and some of the key verses.
High points.
Yeah, hit the high points so that we give it a fair assessment. It's not, most people who are listening to this podcast are already dispensationalists, so they already pretty much know it. But for those who don't, who are coming at this like you didn't even know it was an option, there's a lot of people that didn't know.
A lot of people that don't.
Yeah, and a lot of people.
I don't think I was alone, just even though, obviously I come from a lack of knowledge in many ways. And obviously giving the caveat that, no, I don't really believe any of this that people think is going to happen is going to happen. But if I was to try to interpret that document, that is the path. The literalist path like that is the one I would probably be following, because that's just kind of my nature.
Right. And it's funny because dispensationalists actually say that preterists are more elusive about not being literal, that we're more figurative, which is interesting because we're actually looking at it in literal time, but then we look at the resurrection as a spiritual event. They look at it as not necessarily literal time, but a literal event. Do you see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like it's actually like the resurrection is a physical, like, you're coming out of the graves, you're going up into the air, just like it says, and then you meet Jesus, in heaven.
It seems like two different subjects to me.
Yeah, and the
literal time placement and the metaphorical or literal raising of the bodies seems like two different, related to the same core subject, but essentially two different ideas anyway.
Yeah, and also, just so you're aware, if someone who is coming at the Bible and reading it like a document or looking at it as like a narrative of the past, let's read it as a historical narrative. If you don't understand it, the first thing that you're going to hear is, well, it's spiritually discerned. And so you need the Spirit in order to understand the Word. And that is true about some things. I believe that. I think that there are some things that you just won't get unless the Spirit gets you. However, reading and understanding a document, it's just basic. Reading and understanding is pretty basic. So a lot of the Bible is like that. And a lot of it is figurative and a lot of it is literal. And sometimes it's difficult to figure out which one is which.
Right.
Right.
Because, for me, it's just it's a questionable historical document, but one that absolutely has real events in it.
Yeah.
So.
I was sent a video, and I want to get both of your takes, Ralph and Billy, both, but I was sent a video the other day, and it was it was a dispensationalist preacher. This was just from about a year ago. And he uses a lot of the language. What we didn't get into in this podcast is, like, we talked about C.I. Scofield and the Scofield Reference Bible and how there was dispensationalist theory inside that book. But what we didn't get into, actually we did. We talked about the Dallas Theological Seminary School, Moody Bible Institute, and these other institutions that came up. But one of the things I didn't get into was C.I. Scofield's little booklet called Rightly Dividing the Word of Truth. And one thing you'll hear from dispensationalists is you have to know how to rightly divide the Bible. And C.I. Scofield said that there were certain books of the Bible that you should be reading that a Jew should read, and there were certain books of the Bible that a Gentile should read. And John Hagee teaches the same. I believe that all of the Bible matters, and we should read all of it, right? And that's kind of like the church that you and I come from, Cherry, that we believe like you should read all the Bible, not just pick and select, But in order to make the theory work, that's how you have to do it. You have to, quote unquote, rightly divide the word of truth, which is something that Paul said. And it doesn't even mean that. It means to dissect and to understand. Study to show thyself approved, a workman that needeth not be ashamed, rightly dividing the word of truth. In other words,
I think
study and understand.
I think we ought to study history as well and study the times, and then also look at other writings by other people, even though they call those the unknown gospels or whatever. But I think we should, part of that is, a lot of it to me is understanding the times in which this was written and for whom it was written, and then understanding the history and what's happened since, and trying to put all of that together to come up with, what could be an opinion. I mean, there's a ton of opinions.
Yes.
And what I didn't know going into this was the different sects that there are around this. I mean, there's 4 major sects about this. The preterist, the historicist, the futurist, and the idealist.
Yeah, Cherry went over that. That's right.
And it's interesting. Except for the full preterist, I think that many religions, depends on what church you go into, they're talking any of the other 3.
Yeah, you're right. The full preterist or the hyper preterist is sort of an anomaly.
Right.
They're very few, but that where I get my notes from the Berean Bible Church, they're hyper preterist. They're full on. I've heard that full and hyper don't mean the same thing. So I don't even know how you even describe those. But yeah. So what do you think, Ralph? Like, since you've heard this, like,
I think like I do everything else in the Bible. First of all, I believe it's possible, and I believe in Jesus Christ. So we'll start there. I understand that I don't have a lot of knowledge on any one, as far as the whole thing is concerned, I don't have a lot of knowledge about the whole thing. So I'm still continuing to learn. I believe that it's a possibility. I believe a lot of those things did happen. The part of me that's unsure is at the end times, the tribulation. That's the part where I don't know enough about that, and I've stayed away from that last book of the Bible because I just didn't. First of all, it's never interested me because of the way it talks. I never took the time to really study it, and I have studies on it. I just not done it. So I believe it's possible. I do believe a lot of those things came true, and I believe it's possible that everything up to 70. So I would be a partial preterist, I think.
Yeah.
Thinking that, a lot of this has happened, but when it comes to the tribulation, I have questions. So,
right. Well, and by defining yourself as a partial preterist, you would be saying that the temple was destroyed.
Yes.
Well, the Great Tribulation happens before the temple's destroyed. And so if you're going to use it in timing, that's why the preterist will say time matters.
Right, but I don't have enough knowledge in that area to make it what I would consider an intelligent decision for me. So I say this is where I am, and I need more study on it.
I think where people probably get hung up a lot is the argument that Jesus, when he's talking writ large about the world versus is he talking about Jewish society? Right. And I think that that's a real big hang up for a lot of people because people take that as him talking about the entire world. Mm-hmm. And I'm not sure that's the truth of what he's concerned with, but that's, I think that's where a big tripping
Well, that's
point
another
is.
thing that when I was reading this, I was trying to understand is when they talk about the world, and I wrote a note about that somewhere in here, was he talking about the world as we knew it then? Right. Instead of the world we know today, which is another thing that I say when we need to keep in context with when this happened, what was the known world to those people? Well, it was, the Middle East and the areas surrounding there in Africa, but it wasn't all over the place. They didn't have a lot of knowledge about that. So I don't know if he was talking about the world as everyone knew it, or if he was talking about the world as it would be someday.
Right. Yeah. I can see that. Like, all of these points are good. What about you, Billy? Like, since you'd never heard this before.
Nope.
So what do you think?
I'm right there with Andy on that. I'm like, I didn't know there was another option until you introduced this, and I can't say you're wrong. because I mean everything that Jesus said. I'm not going to say that Jesus is wrong, because everything that he said happened.
Right.
And if you go back to, if you're standing there and listening to Jesus talk, and then like the temple is destroyed, you'd be like, well, this is it. So if anything, it's made my understanding that God is in control. So I can't imagine the slack that you're getting, Rick, to introduce this thought or this opinion, because I mean the church is always. I've always been taught that Jesus is coming. He's coming back. The billboards, the messages, everything that Jesus spoke of then in that time is to, correspond with us now. And so this was interesting. I can't say that you're wrong. I don't know if I fully agree with you. But like I said, we're all entitled to our opinions and our beliefs, and it's very interesting. Very interesting.
What none of you guys know is that if any of you said, "Hey, Rick, I fully agree with you," then I would be very disappointed because I know that you haven't done the homework.
See, I thought you were going to go with if somebody fully agreed with me, they were going to get a car. And I was like, we missed our Oprah moment.
Well, darn.
You get a car. You get a car.
I like Billy's. I didn't know there was another choice. It's like going to weddings and saying, fish. I didn't know there was fish.
Yeah. I was going to say, and at the end of
I do? Is there another choice? Not I do?
Yeah.
I thought you were talking about food, right, Ralph?
At the end of the podcast, there'll be something underneath each one of your chairs.
It's my Reese eggs. It's my
the
Reese
atheist,
eggs.
you'll know, not sitting.
You're standing. And just so you
no
know,
surprising he's single, folks.
mine will probably be a dog turd. That's what I've been getting pictures of lately. So.
Oh, really?
Well, he got the one, but he's real anxious about it.
Honestly, that one didn't bother me near as much as the people that just go on. They're very threatening. It's like it's a dangerous thing to talk outside of what you know. And what I learned from this study, what I personally learned from this, is that there are a lot of people throughout history that have looked at the Bible in different ways. And I don't think that it's wrong to do that. I think that you learn from the society that you're raised in. You have the family that you're in, the community that you're in. You read this Bible with the best of the ability that you have in your mind. And then as you begin to learn and you see things and you develop, you're allowed to change. And that's something that I didn't know. For a long time, I felt like, preachers would say, God doesn't change, and it's like, you're right. He doesn't, but I do. And so my view of who God is has gotten bigger and better than it ever was.
Well, I think what you're doing is, none of us are born with prejudices. There isn't a child born with a prejudice. We're given those. And I think you're stripping away your prejudices. And what I mean by that is, as you grow older and you are with people, they give you their optics, which is a prejudice, which is their opinion, which is their view. And so you're stripping away all the prejudices that have been put upon you in your life, and you're coming up with what is now your own view.
Sure. I mean, go ahead.
I was just going to say, I would hope any of us, that believe in Jesus Christ for sure, wouldn't spend a lifetime, however long that is here, and never view God differently, even though he doesn't change. I would hope that we each grow in our relationship with him. I mean, if you don't study, if you were to say, well, I've been in the church, say, for 10 years, whatever, blah, 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 and I still have the same view of it that I did originally, then you have no growth.
That's right.
That's not healthy for a spiritual relationship either.
I agree with that 100%. And I said that parable about this guy was given this many and this was given this guy and this guy, everybody was given money, and one buried him and one made 5 and the other one made 10 and was taken away. I think it's the same thing with your spirituality, your walk with the Lord. I think that he just doesn't give you this. Yes, you have salvation, and if you just ask for it and you believe it, fine. But still, read and study and get in the Word, and because the more you get in the Word, the more you're going to understand. The more you understand, you're going to be able to share, and you're going to be able to answer the commission because you will be prepared.
Right.
Mm-hmm. Go ahead.
As an outsider, I just say, when I meet a Christian, if you're having or whatever you believe in, doesn't have to be Christianity. If you're having a discussion about something like this, and their view is, I don't know, that doesn't make sense, and yet I believe,
Yeah.
That person I hold in much higher regard than somebody that never will admit to confusion, never will admit to doubt. You know what I mean?
Right.
But the one that's like, yeah, I know that's weird, but yet I have faith. That is a person I appreciate,
Yeah.
you know, the ability to have both of those things. That's a real human that's admitting the truth of themselves, as opposed to people that pretend like they don't have doubt or pretend like they never see two things that don't quite make sense. That's ridiculous.
Right.
I've been proven wrong so many times that I always say, this is what I believe, but I'm not sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm always in like this fight to prove it. You know, that's what I'm always in for myself. Like in order for me to change my beliefs, I have to prove it to myself. And the only way that I'm going to do that is through the scripture, because all of these things that we're talking about revolve around the Bible, you know, the same way with every other thing in my life too, you know, like I will prove to myself that gravity doesn't work. And then next thing you know, I'm flat on my face. Right. So, but I've always been that way. And that's something that it makes me happy to continue to seek. But, you know, when I first encountered Jesus as a child, there was a reason why, and it was psychological, you know, for me in the beginning, is because I just didn't feel a lot of love, even though I love my family. I love my mom and my dad. Oh, let's just be real. I do. And every human makes errors and do the things they do. My parents did what they did. I love my parents. It doesn't matter. But in the early phases, they were trying to figure it out. They were kids that had kids, you know, they were in their teens and they had me. And, you know, so there was a lot going on in their life. They were super stressed out and they couldn't really focus on me. So I felt I wasn't abandoned as a child, but I felt a lack of love and I felt very lost, you know. And so I had some people that were showing me a lot of attention and they were very loving people. And I enjoyed that, you know, that fellowship with them as a child. I longed for it. I went for it, you know, and if it had been a pagan group or a satanic group or whatever, if they were showing me love, I probably would have went that direction, but that's not what happened in my life. I had Christians that came to my home that invited me to be a part of this church. And then
literally why gangs are a thing, because it doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It doesn't
Yeah.
make sense if you don't understand that.
Sure.
That's what
family.
people are finding there. Right.
Yeah, and they take care of each other and they love one another and they do what they got to do.
Which sometimes is ridiculous from the outside, but to them, somehow it makes sense, I guess.
Well, of course, you know, it does. And so for me, that's what happened to me. And that's how I got involved in this to begin with. But I went away from it for a long time. I got to a point to where I didn't believe in anything at all. Like I as far as God, I didn't believe that there was a God that had created all things. I really believed in, I didn't really care about the Big Bang and how they wanted to describe it. To me, it seemed like everything was chaos and that chaos came at, you know, created order and then order goes back to chaos. And, you know, the universe is small and then it expands and then it goes small and expands, or there's multiverses, or like, I went through all of the things, you know, and then I started looking at Eastern religions and trying to understand that just by some friends that were dabbling in it, you know. But there was something that happened to me outside of all of these other people that happened to me individually that made me cling to Jesus. That for him, he was the one that I wanted. And it was the reason why was because, first of all, he was the only one in the religion that I saw that completely sacrificed himself based on these rules that were set up in the universe by this God. And so he was a man that came to his people and was healing them and was, you know, trying to make them better and telling them to love their enemies. And like, I thought, why in the world are they killing this guy? You know, like, why'd they kill him? Because why were they so upset? And then I thought, man, isn't that how society is? I mean, you try to do something good and it just knocks you down a peg. That's just what our world does, you know, and even in the people that are the most successful, they have bad days. They have really bad days, you know, it can happen.
Success is no indication of happiness, unfortunately.
Not at all. Happiness has nothing to do with success. I mean, sure, for a season, you know, but for me, I saw everything that Jesus did, and I just thought, I got to get to know this better. I got to get to know him better. I got to get to, you know, and I wasn't even in a relationship with him. I just wanted to know him better. And the only place that I can find that is in the Bible. Even the people that claim to read the Bible think a lot of things about Jesus that aren't real. And so in order to know who he was, I went to the source. Now, those books were written by man, They were physically pinned down by man, but I believe that God used the man to write these things. And I have my reasons, and I'm not going to explain them right now, but I have my reasons why I believe that, and I truly do. And so when I got into this book, then it started to open up a little bit at a time. Over time, I just kept studying. And that's what this podcast was about. There are preconceived notions, guys, that we all learn that prevent us from knowing who he really is. He is in this book. If you want to know who Jesus is, read the book. If you don't read it and you want to complain about him, I feel like you should just shut your mouth. I mean, that's how I feel. If you're not going to at least give the time to the book where he comes from, and you're just going to say, oh, no. You can complain about his believers and what they do all that you want, because that's going to continue going. But if you want to know who he is, then give him the time and get in that book and read it.
It's just like people that don't vote, but then want to complain. You want to complain, vote.
Yeah.
To be fair, I know a lot of mostly non-believers, not necessarily like avowed atheists, because it's not like people that don't believe don't spend a lot of time worrying about it. But none of them that I don't know anybody that's like thinks Jesus or the message that comes with Jesus is not pretty worthwhile.
Yeah.
I really don't. It's not like I've done a poll, but it comes up every once in a while. Life's long.
Yeah.
Well,
You
I've
talk
spoken
about
with
stuff.
a lot of, I agree with that, because I've talked with a lot of people, and some people that are atheists, and they say, at the end, they say, well, what do you think? And I say, well, at the very least, if you don't believe that, if you read the Bible and you read the different things, and it's the only guidebook for life that there really is, because they talk about relationships and money, and I mean, everything is in there. So at the very least, if you want a book of life, there's a book of life.
Yeah.
There's life in that book, and death, and all
Mayhem
sorts of
and-
stuff.
And if you're
It's
looking for
full.
some blood,
Yeah, it's
there's
got
some
blood.
blood in there,
There
yeah.
will be blood.
there will be blood. Yeah. All right.
donkeys.
So I'm going to ask a couple of questions, and then we're going to wrap this one up. And I just asked the listeners, do your homework. In that video that was sent to me, the preacher said, you don't know anything unless you rightly divide the word of truth. Look what the Bible says. Look what it says in Olivet Discourse. It says the sun will be darkened and the moon will lose its light and the stars will fall from the sky. That ain't happened yet. These people are idiots. That's what he said. He's basically calling me an idiot, is what he's doing in the video. I mean, I'm not offended, but that's what he said. And I thought, he just said something that's kind of bizarre to me. He said that they need to rightly divide the word of truth, but he has no idea what the sun, moon, and stars mean. And you guys should know it by now. If you don't, it's in the Old Testament. It is something that prophets spoke in judgment of nations that came from God. This was how he spoke it. The sun would be darkened and the moon would lose its light and the stars would fall from the skies. The earth would roll up like a scroll. The mountains would be filled with blood. Like this was apocalyptic language. I'm rightly dividing the Bible, and I'm telling you what the sun, moon, and stars mean. I'm telling you what a cloud coming means. I learned in this one that the cloud coming from the ascension was the actual fulfillment of the cloud coming to the throne of God, and that he was the Ancient of Days. I learned that. I was like, oh, wow, the cloud was going up too. And that is a fulfillment of prophecy. Like I hadn't really known that. And I wouldn't have if I hadn't put the time in, So according to the Bible, Billy, who created the world?
Trick question.
Jesus.
Right. So God created it, but Jesus was the instrument, correct? We learned that in our very first podcast. Yeah. So let's wrap this up. I'm going to try to do the quickest overview possible, okay? God made a covenant with a man named Abraham, okay? When he created the world, when Adam and Eve were in the garden, they sinned, they fell. Man was only doing evil continually. That's what the Bible teaches. Evil continually. We've studied the Nephilim. That was during the time when the evil angels were coming in and sleeping with the women and making these giants in the land and all that. They were doing evil continually. And God, in his heart, had repented that he made man, and so he floods the earth, right? He absolutely floods the earth. After that, God, with what he saw, he said he would never do it again, right? The Bible says that. So we've learned something about God. He was sad that he made man, but then he was even sadder when he killed him. because he does give them another chance, and we learn that in the New Testament in Peter that Jesus goes and preaches to them that died in the flood.
I'll give him the rainbow back if he brings another flood and gets rid of everybody that shouldn't be here.
Man, that is so mean.
We are poor excuses for God's creatures, I have to say.
Well, I mean, not all of us.
So let me pause you. Just pick everyone's brain real quick.
Pause me.
Just pause, Rick. Just hold up. If God knew all this, then why bother? Why bother?
Why bother what?
Why bother create this?
Literally goes to the core of one of the reasons that I just don't believe in this religion.
Well, yeah. I mean, why bother with man? Why not keep the dinosaurs or whatever? You see what I'm saying?
Yes.
I mean, I mean, I know this is our faith. This is the core building block of our faith. So, but like Andy said, like if he knows all this, he knows he has to flood, he knows he has to send his son, then why?
What if is what I've always
exactly like. Why even put the snake in the bush?
It's the problem of the claim of it's the problem of the claim of ineffability.
I'm gonna go with love.
You're going to get a lot of backlash on that.
I don't care. You know what?
I think that's a good answer. You know what? I stand with her.
I mean, it's funny that you asked that.
I agree. It's a good answer because it's the same reason for having kids.
Yeah.
You know that's going to be a pain.
Yeah.
It's going to cost. It's going to this, going to that.
I think that's as good an answer as you're going to get.
I mean,
I'll take it.
It's love. If you're not, I mean, let's be real. Okay. I got this little dog. He's ugly. He's so ugly. I would have never bought the dog, would have never, really. Not, my son said he wanted to rescue this dog back when he was in middle school. I was like, no, we already have dogs. So he sneaks the dog in the house. He's hiding the dog in a crate. And I go in there and I find the dog and I'm like, dang it. He's brought this dog home. And I look at this dog and I'm like, this dog is so ugly that if I take him to the pound or something, they're just gonna put him down. Like nobody's possibly gonna want this dog. Yeah. They're not. And I just looked at him. I felt so bad for him. I was like, oh, bless. I'm just gonna have to keep him anyway. I've met people like that you just look at and you're like,
why are you?
You look at them and they're such a mess, or they're just so unwanted or so neglected, or you're just like, it's the love. It's the love that you have that's in you. That you look at things like us. I think God looked at us. I mean, even though he created us, like Ralph said, got kids, man. If you got kids, you got issues. But I'm just saying, there just comes a point where love takes over all the muck and mess and yuck because you love. And I think he loved us.
I agree with that. Some of you know that we are trying to take guardianship of a young woman, and she's just turned 15, and the only thing I knew about her were bad things, the things that she did that were bad. And then my daughter comes and says, she's just got picked up and taken away from her family, and I want her to live here. And I'm thinking, okay, I know like 6 or 7 bad things that this girl has done, and you want her to come into my house. And God said, yeah, you've got the love for this girl, and you've got to do it. And I don't know. I've told her this several times. I honestly don't know. I honestly don't know how I feel about her the way I do as early as I do, because it's only a God thing. God put love for this human being in my heart in order for me to accept someone this damaged and troubled into my house with another teenage girl that could be corrupted. And it certainly hasn't gone that way. It hasn't gone that way at all. We've just shown her love. But I agree with you. Love is all you need.
Yeah. I mean, and 9 times out of 10, you get kicked in the teeth because of love. But
it's all
you love anyway.
So I'm just like a puppy dog. I just keep coming back.
Yeah, it's interesting. I was sitting here thinking, what you were saying, that one of the attributes of God is that he is holy. And I've said this in previous podcasts. We don't really know what that is. Like we can't understand absolute holiness.
Right.
But he made
pure.
This, yeah, it's pure, but he made a thing. Like he made a man, and he made a woman. But he didn't make the woman right away. He made the man first. Right? Mm-hmm. And he saw that man was alone. And it was the only thing that God had made that wasn't good. Do you ever notice that?
Yep.
It's everything else he said it was good, but the fact that man was alone wasn't good. And so he made the woman so that he would have a companion. And I think that's because God understands companionship. I think he does, and so through the course of time, as he's made man and he tells them, okay, I'm holy, and these are the things that you have to do in order for me to relate with you. But they couldn't, because they'd ate of the tree of the tree of knowledge of good and evil. And I always want everybody to remember, the knowledge of good is in that line too, okay? You can act like a really good person, but anyway, they were broken. And so not only had I made this thing that he was able to walk with before, but then when he made these statutes and all these, they couldn't do it. They could not. It wasn't going to happen. So he creates these things. There's no remission of sin unless there's blood that has to be spilt. If any of you try to live without blood, none of you will. That's one thing that all of us have, is blood. And without it, we can't go. Like, we're not going to go. So blood is a very important thing. It's the thing that God gave us to make us alive. It's the oxygen that's in our blood, and we got the heart that pumps the blood and all that, but it's the blood. If the blood goes out, we're done, correct? So my point is that blood is an important thing. Even though we see it in horror movies and we think ugly of it, without blood, there is no life for us or for any creature that we know of, right? Every creature it has blood, right?
Yep.
In some fashion.
As far as I know.
Yeah.
Well,
maybe they're amoebas. Do they have
there's
blood?
like little single-celled organisms, but they have what is it? The liquid? There's a liquid in them. I mean, they still have a liquid that moves nutrients and things through their little cell.
Sure. But I can't answer why God had to have blood, but I used to think that a long time, like, well, why? Why am I going to do that? All I can say is that without blood, there is no life. And so that's an important thing that God sees. And I agree. If that's what God sees, that's what God sees. But it took his only son who said to himself, being equal with God is not necessary. I'm going to make myself lower even than these angels and these other beings that are around me. And I'm going to become a man. And I'm going to even go beneath that. I'm going to become a servant to the man. And I'm even going to go beneath that. I'm going to sacrifice my life for the servant. I'm going to go below. And he taught that when he was in his ministry. He got down and he washed the feet of his disciples. He did a servant's action, but yet he is the master of all things, but he's a servant at heart. He did some beautiful things, And so when we read John 3:16, even though I always complain we're taking it out of context, but if you listen to it, it says, for God so loved the world. That for, you got to go back and read the other 15 verses to understand it. But for God so loved the world that he gave his only begotten Son, that whosoever believeth in him shall not perish, but have everlasting life. Everlasting life. Everlasting life. Think about that for a minute. So now you've got a God that had a problem. He had a being that he loved, and they can't work. So what he does is he allows the blood of Christ, what Christ did for him. He did for the Father. He didn't do it for you. A lot of times we think that. He didn't want to go to the cross. Remember we talked about that when he was in the garden. He wanted out, but he loved the Father. He did it for the Father so that the Father could have us. And so the way that every Christian, I don't care what sect you're in, when God looks at the human being in judgment, the one that wants the everlasting life or the eternal life that goes beyond this world into the next, which I believe in, that he is the only bridge to that because of his blood, his lifeblood is what did it. And so basically he sees what Jesus did for me, and then he will have communion with me no matter what I do. That doesn't mean that I'm going to go around punching around, I'm a jerk and I can do whatever I want. That's not what it means. Paul said that many times. He said, even though grace abounds where sin does, should I sin all the more? Because grace will abound that much more? God forbid.
Yep.
No, we're not supposed to. We're supposed to try not to sin. We're supposed to try to love our enemies. We're supposed to do the things. We're supposed to walk in the footsteps of Christ the way that he did. That is what we all should be spending our time doing. We're talking about eschatology because it was important, because Jesus said that it was important. He said it. This is when this is going to happen. But the people that killed him had to be judged, and he said they would be within a generation, and they were. And so that to me is important. It was. But from beyond that point and how all eschatology works and all the arguments and all the stuff that they do, I can't raise my flag, guys. I don't know.
Well, I think, it's funny you say that. The Pharisees and the Sadducees wanted him killed because he would threaten their lifestyle. Well, they lost it anyway.
Right.
Yeah. So, regardless of what your eschatology is, just remember this. Christ died for the ungodly. That's what the Bible says. Christ died for the ungodly. And if anybody wants him, all they have to do is ask. That's it. All they have to do is ask. And that's all that's required. Everybody else who might say, you have to do this and you have to do this, and you forget it. You don't have to do anything else.
And you don't have to say, God, I'm a sinner and I know I deserve death. Because every time everybody says it, it's like, how are you going to get God? How are you going to get somebody to believe in God? Why not just say, I believe?
Yeah, I mean,
that's it.
Of course, there's repentance. I mean, repentance comes with it. Repentance meaning, I understand that without you, I'm not going to have this next life. And also, like you said, Sherry, you said you weren't worried about heaven or hell or anything. You just said my life's a wreck.
Yeah.
Totally
broken.
For me, it was like, I wanted love, And what was your reason, Billy? Like whenever you decided to get saved, what was it?
I just felt loved, Yeah.
Ralph?
I go back to that second grade. God said, come, I obeyed. That's
right.
it. I've been around it all my life. I believed, and he said, come, and I did. And once I questioned right after my divorce because I was angry, but no other time.
Yeah. So for anyone that's listening that is curious about it, you just take a minute and stop. Take stock in your life. Do you understand that things that you do are considered sin to a holy God? Well, if you feel inclined, if something's coming in your heart and you feel inclined, then talk to him. If you feel sorry, tell him you're sorry. If you need love, tell him you need love. Whatever. Just come to him and ask him. The repentance and all of the things, these are things that are going to naturally happen. Naturally, because you're going to feel that conviction that comes. It just happens that way. So no matter what your eschatology is, if you do not have love, then what do you got? Love is all you need. Right?
Love is all you need.
All you need.
That and gasoline.
So this completes our Olivet Discourse study. We didn't really get into any word. We are going to do a series on history, the history of the church from the first century all the way up to the present. It is a huge study. But next, we're going to hit the Esther series. We promised we already did the kickoff, so we're going to get into the Esther series. It's a wonderful book to study. And so we're going to get into that. And so that's it. And just so you know, right now, we are in the midst of Holy Week. Mm-hmm. Today, is Holy Week, and tomorrow would be Good Friday, which would be, according to the Catholics, that was the day that Christ died. And then, to Baptists too. Some people do. I don't.
Unless you're Orthodox, and then it happens next week.
After Passover?
Next Friday. Orthodox are on a different calendar. That's next Friday for them.
What? I didn't. See, I learned something new every day.
Better study that,
Orthodox
Rick.
are on
I'm not studying that one.
Yeah.
I got other things going on. Anyway, well, guys, thanks again for listening, and thanks for listening to me go down that path, of the preterist. I know it's hard to do, but maybe we'll look into the other ones too. Like I like post-millennialism. I've looked into that too, but hey, I haven't got my flags raised up.
So
he's got some great songs.
Who's that?
I'm kidding. It's a bad joke that two people got. Thank you two people.
What were you saying, Billy?
So he's coming back with a hammer or a silver surfboard.
I'm hoping the silver surfboard, he was pretty cool.
Yeah, he was pretty cool.
What an obvious product of the 60s, right?
Yeah.
Silver Surfer?
Yeah. That would be Stan Lee. Yep, Stan Lee.
So anyway.
Well, thanks for being here, Billy.
Well, thank you, Rick. This is
Ralph,
awesome.
Thanks for being here, Andy.
That was interesting.
Yeah, Cherry. That's
Thanks,
the
Rick.
end. Yeah, part 8, we're done. Hey, let's get into something else, huh? All right. Well, we'll talk to you guys next time on the Burrows of Berea.
I didn't think that was ever going to end.
That's what she said.